Okay, we are going to review density today. What is density? Okay, we have talked about this before break. Density is a measure of how much stuff is inside an object for the amount of space an object takes up. So I could have a large object with a little bit of stuff in it, a large object with a lot of stuff in it, a small object, a medium object. It all depends on the side and how much stuff is inside of it. Floating or sinking. Density also affects whether an object will float in water or whether an object will sink in water. If an object floats in water, it means that they are less dense than the water, and if an object sinks in the water, it means that they are more dense than the water. Now we're going to take a little look at this in more depth. Okay, so to start, we have our box right here. The red dots represent the stuff inside of the box. Now we go to the right here. This is the same size box, but you see it has less stuff inside of it, less red dots. So this would make it less dense. Both boxes have the same volume, but this box has less stuff in it, making it less dense. Now we go back to our original box. Let's look at this one down here. Once again, it's the same size, the same volume, but you'll notice that there's more red dots inside of it this time. Now this is making it more dense. So this one up here had less stuff, making it less dense, and this one has more stuff, making it more dense. So this one would float, and this one would sink. And finally, we have our original box, and then we have a smaller box here. If you notice, it has the same amount of stuff inside, but this one has the stuff more tightly packed together. There's not as much space between the dots, and this makes it more dense and going to make it sink. So not only is it about the size of the object, but it's also about the amount of stuff inside of the object. So less stuff, less dense, more stuff, more dense, tighter together, more dense. Remember the Coke and Diet Coke experiment? We had our regular Coke and our Diet Coke, and we wanted to see which one would float and would sink. And we knew that the Coke would sink because it had more sugar in it, so it had more stuff inside of it. Our Diet Coke did not sink because it did not have all that extra sugar. It was 36 grams of sugar in the Coke that the Diet Coke did not have. So more stuff, it's going to sink. Less stuff, it's going to float. Now, our liquid layers, we talked a little bit about this when we watched the video. So you can see that everything is layered on top of each other. It's floating depending on its density. So our most dense liquid here is honey because it's all the way at the bottom. Our least dense liquid layer is our lamp oil because it's floating on top of all the other layers. Now, we added some extra things in here. For example, the popcorn kernel, which is right here. The popcorn kernel happens to be less dense than the corn syrup because it's floating on top of it, but it's more dense than maple syrup because it is beneath it. It's sunk below the maple syrup. It also sunk under the milk, the dish soap, the water, the vegetable oil, the rubbing alcohol, and lamp oil. So it's more dense than all of these combined. So depending on where an object is, whether it floats or sinks, depends on how dense it is. It could be more dense or less dense. Thanks for reviewing.